Welcome everyone to another episode of Drunk Agile. We have Prateek Singh staring at us kind of weirdly in the camera there. We have Nisha, who is magically still in her same place. Hey Nisha, hi sweetie. And oddly again, it's one of those weird coincidences where we're wearing the same thing from as
We planned
last
this.
as last
Yeah, we
episode.
planned this.
If you want to see what we're drinking, you can watch the last episode. I'm actually out, which means that this episode will be really good. Should we do the same thing where I introduce it and then you kick us off? Is that okay? Can we do
Sure,
that?
let's do it.
All
Why
right.
not? You can see how we planned this. We did our sprint planning just before this.
We did plan harder. Arbitrary. Um we left off last week or last time talking about how most people think that time boxes help you manage complexity and help you manage risk. But really, our thesis is that time boxes actually increase complexity and they increase risk. How can that possibly be, Prateek? Pretty much all of Agile, any Agile framework you look at, has some notion of a time box. Why would they say that if it actually makes things more complex and more risky?
I want to warn everyone. This is going to be one of those where Dan's going to go on a rant, and we're just going to sit here and listen to him rant. um, yeah, it's an interesting thing that we've carried forward the idea that there needs to be a timeline or a time box from traditional management into Agile. And we believe we became more agile just by making that time box smaller. Um, that did not get rid of all the issues that the time box had initially, just made those issues smaller at a smaller scale. Everything that Dan you were talking about, risk and complexity, and even the lack of predictability. That's the other thing. People think that time boxes make you predictable. They don't. They absolutely do not ensure predictability. Predictability is assured by a lot of other things that we'll probably get into. Um, but yeah, time boxes in general, all they've done is they've taken the large scale time box, at least in Agile, taken the large scale time box, all the risk and complexity that was occurring due to it, and made it smaller. So now there is smaller risk and complexity. It hasn't necessarily driven those out.
Yeah, think about what happens though, and we kind of alluded to this last time. But think about what happens, and again, we're picking on Scrum probably just because everybody knows Scrum, right? But you know, a Scrum team is chugging along. They're trying to get their work done, but the time box expires. We reach the end of the sprint. Think about what happens, right? It's pencils down, heads up, stop whatever you're working on. We got to do a review. It doesn't matter where you are. Hopefully you've got that done increment. Hopefully you've met your sprint goal, but you probably haven't. But we got to do our review. We got to do our retrospective. Did you want to jump in?
It's worse. Hopefully, the stuff that you were working on, we still think it's valuable.
Yeah,
like all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
We got to do a review. We got to do a retrospective. We got to do our planning for our next sprint. We got to start making decisions about, hey, the stuff we're working on at the end of the sprint, do we still carry that over to the next sprint? How do we interpret that signal, that quote unquote signal that we didn't get our stuff done last sprint? What do we need to change about that? For me anyway, it's quite obvious how all of those things add to complexity rather than take away from complexity. The way to take away the complexity would be to remove the time box and for the work to expand or contract to whatever that natural level of variation that exists in your process. I think we said this in one of the previous videos. I don't know, we have to go back and check the tape, but variation is intrinsic. It's intrinsic to what we do, and so the idea that we're going to drive out complexity by ignoring variation, I just don't know how this is going to sound mean, but how any sane person could come to that conclusion, right?
Yeah, and the The other argument that I always hear about time boxes is it gives you a cadence. It's like this, and humans want cadence. Talk to any developer that works for a Scrum team, like seriously, like go talk to them. And I would say 90% of the developers are like, that just interrupted me. This thing just, I was heads down, natural flow of work. I had gotten 3 things done. I was on the 4th thing, and all of a sudden, pencils down, I'm interrupted. That arbitrary cadence that we've put in place is actually hurting us more than it's helping us, at least when from a developer's perspective. For me as a developer, it was always a weird thing of, I got to stop now, but I was in the middle of that thing. It's not just, I know Dan's been talking about this from the perspective of what the process looks like, what the data tells us. But even from a human perspective, it is very risk-inducing, if you want to call it that, from just a human perspective.
So if we talk about the risk perspective, because I want to, and I'm going to try not to rant on this one, because I do want to talk about the risk part of this too. The classic argument you hear when you talk about time boxes and risk is, well, at the very least, we've limited our risk to what we're working on to the time of the time box, right?
Yep.
We're not going to go more than 14 days before, you know, we have review and we talk to our customers and we make sure that we're spending properly or whatever. And that sounds all nice and wonderful, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound great? Until you look at the fact that most Scrum teams don't hit that time box. And so now you're having to make those decisions about, you know, have we spent, you know, have we spent too much money? Should we continue? You're having to make those decisions based on incomplete work, unverified assumptions, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's worse if you think, because people will always say, well, you know, but you can all, like as Prateek said before, but you can always deliver before the end of the, you know, end of the time box. In which case I would say, if that's your goal and that's what you're doing, what is the time box really buying you then? Why even have it, right? So, I mean, that's, you know, because you get this other behavior that we talked about last time, that people arbitrarily want to fill up the you know, the rest of that thing, rather than saying, hey, we've met our goal, let's celebrate that and let's move on to the next thing. In both of those cases, you have actually increased your risk. You haven't de-risked anything. You've made it worse.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are people out there who will come back with, and rightfully come back with, well, okay, what if we just run 1-day sprints? You know, it's like, okay, yeah, if 2 weeks is too long, why don't we just run 1-day sprints? But I think it's missing the point that we've been trying to make, if that is your argument. We're missing the point that we're trying to make, which is your process, your work has a natural cycle time, a natural cycle time distribution. It gets done naturally at different points of time. There's some variability in there. The time box will almost never match that natural cycle time distribution unless the time box is distributed the same way and you magically line it up with every item. And if you magically start lining up your cadence with every item, well, you're doing one-piece flow. That's essentially what you're doing. So time box then has to be very variable.
Yeah. It's the classic, you know, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole problem. I mean, I was just, as you were talking and I was ignoring you, I wasn't listening to you.
Of course.
I was trying to think of, you know, examples in history where trying to control variation in a process by segmented it into time boxes has actually worked. And I'll kind of throw that as a throw that out as a challenge to our audience. You know, when has that ever really worked? You know, once you recognize that there is natural variation in a process, when has it ever worked to try and control that via some fixed length arbitrary? That's the key here, a fixed length arbitrary time box, right? That's when, you know, so when has that ever worked?
But when has it worked without a death march towards the end?
Sure.
to make that happen, like without upsetting the natural rhythm of your process.
Right. And any result is just it can be discernible from luck, right? I guess, yeah. So did everybody get all those
all those caveats
that we threw in there?
And it was a full moon night.
Yeah. Rainy Thursday in Lent. All of that. So I mean, at the risk of repeating myself and going on a rant, I mean, I don't know that I have really too much more to add. As always, I guess I'd like to give you the last word, unless of course I think of something and then I will take the last word.
Yeah, as always, I'll give you the last word and then take it. No, it's an interesting conundrum that we are all in, because I think a lot of Agile has been based around time boxes, and we have referred to this multiple times. When you're basing things around time boxes, you're really talking about deterministic thinking. This stuff has to be done in this period of time. This goal has to fit this. And our world's not deterministic, our world's probabilistic, and we need to understand that, and we need to understand that variation in order to actually take advantage of that variation, instead of increase the risk and uncertainty because of that variation.
I can't improve on that, but I do reserve the right to come back in some later episode and rant about this. But as always, the invitation is there to all of you. What do you think? Do time boxes help manage complexity? Do time boxes help de-risk projects and product delivery? Let us know what you think. I guess with that, we got to do the quick Nisha check. Where is she? Is she?
Yep.
She good? She's
still where she was.
Still there? Okay. So for Nisha, excited as always. For Prateek Singh, my name is Daniel Vacanti. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in the next episode. Good night, everyone.
Right.